So we're back at the 200-yard line practicing shooting at distance again, and I'll be using my M4 and my ACOG just like in my previous videos. The thing I wanted to do differently this time though is to talk a little bit more of what I've learned so far in my few times of shooting at this distance. That's something I've kind of touched on some observations before, but I didn't really kind of break down like what is going well and then what do I feel I need to improve on. So that's what I want to devote some time to at the end after I roll in some footage of my shooting from this last session. I can tell I've become a lot more familiar with using my M4 paired with the ACOG. Even though I shot a lot within 50 yards or so, I think just using red dots and different optics really kind of, and the shooting style was really just kind of pretty different. And so now I've definitely become a lot more comfortable and become a lot more familiar with using my gun for this type of application. Specifically with the ACOG, because the eye relief is so short and I just wasn't used to having that recoil so close to my eye because of the eye relief. I think that had a level of discomfort, or was just more alien to me from before. But now just the more I've been going, I've become a lot more used to it, which is really good. And understanding how to use the reticle, and again, I've been throwing around the word comfort, just being comfortable with using the reticle and knowing how to shoot with the ACOG. I definitely have some practice to go, but I can tell that I'm feeling a lot more grounded with it. At the same time, over the past 3 videos that I've made, I can tell that I have some things that are going well, but also some things where I definitely need to improve on. So I'll throw in some footage of my last range session, and then I'll devote the rest of the video to just kind of talking about my progress so far and what I know I need to focus on. And hopefully by me sharing these things with you, you'll also be able to pick up on anything, or you can give me some pointers too. So hope you enjoy, and then I'll catch you at the end. So that does it for this last range session. As you can kind of tell, I didn't get to record all of my different hits and targets. I don't know if the camera just wasn't working well in the heat, but in the end, directionally you kind of saw where it went. I was hitting the target all the time, but there was still a decent spread around the A zone. I compared this to my last range session as well, and the groups were a little wider then, but I think I have some ideas of why that might be. So I wanted to pivot to this section of the video first by talking about what I feel is going well with my training. And so particularly with my trigger manipulation and then also with my shooting rhythm. So starting with trigger manipulation, what I mean by this is not jerking the trigger back and making sure to take up the slack in it and to always shoot from the wall, kind of like what I was doing with my pistol. Previously when I started, that was something that for some reason just didn't really click with me. For some reason, I always thought that was just purely for pistols, for taking up the slack on the trigger and shooting from the wall. But I started to apply this now over the last few range sessions to my rifle shooting, and that definitely has helped me a lot. I think also that I'm pretty particular, or at least I try to be very cognizant about pulling the trigger straight back as opposed to having a little bit of a wiggle to the right or to the left with my trigger pull, which would throw off my shot by turning the rifle one way or the other. So that I feel like I'm doing well, and I'm pretty confident about that. And then the second thing also is my shooting rhythm. So just the speed at which I'm shooting. When I was a younger shooter and first starting shooting at distance here, I would shoot a lot faster because I think I was just used to doing that kind of speed or rhythm when I was shooting within like 50 yards or 25 or whatnot. But I've learned that I really have to take my time, not just to conserve ammo, but just to be focused and to make every shot count. And I'm glad that I've started to develop that discipline to not always just be spamming the trigger and shooting as much as I can. Even though that's fun as hell, I know that's not the proper way to practice. Being intentional with every shot also helps me not kind of fatigue or burn out. Like if I'm just shooting all the time, it's like each shot kind of doesn't really mean anything. Whereas if I'm constantly thinking between shots and taking and slowing down, I'm always thinking about like a mental checklist. Is my trigger control right? Is my stance right? Am I, doing XYZ correctly? I have more time to think about this if I'm slower between my shots, as opposed to just shooting a lot more quickly. So those are the things that I feel like are going well, but there are also a handful of things which I know I need to practice on a little more. So even though I just talked about taking time between shots, I can tell that I still need to work on this kind of composure or discipline. So what I mean by that is, even if I'm shooting more slowly between shots, I sometimes find that when I'm trying to line up my sights and when I'm just trying to focus on my breathing and take all these factors into account, I'm getting there, as I mentioned, but sometimes I'm still too frustrated and I'll just say screw it and take the shot anyway, even when I know I could have taken just another few seconds to really line it up. In terms of composure too, another thing that really got to me, particularly with this last range session, was just the heat. It was for me, so damn hot. It was like 110 degrees. And so when I'm sitting there, I see the mirage in the reticle, makes it harder to line up my sights. And then just the overall heat makes me frustrated. And then I'm sweating in my eyes and all this other crap. It can be pretty difficult to remain calm and composed. And so that kind of mental game as well is something that I'm definitely still trying to get around. And I think particularly this last range session, that like really messed with me. But it's all good. It's part of the practice process. And so, I'm not going to complain about it anymore. It's just something I know I need to like get in the right headspace about. On a similar topic to composure and just making sure I am taking the best shots possible, sight alignment is actually another one. I didn't pick up on this until my very last range session, but I've actually noticed that I am not perfectly lining up my sights all the time. I think what I'm doing is that although the reticle is always on the target, I am shifting my head back and forth and I'm not perfectly focused, or I'm not consistently looking down the sight in the same way. So what I mean by this is I will notice that if I am looking through the scope, sometimes when I shoot, I can see there's like writings on the inside of the scope that I can reference. But sometimes those are visible to me and sometimes they're not. And so that I can tell I am not actually lining up my sights properly. And so while I think I'm shooting directly at my target, I might be a little bit off to the right, a little up instead of down, and so on and so forth. And I think that also contributed to some of my performance for this range session. And then the last thing I'll talk about also was ammo. So I made the poor choice of using 55 grain Wolf steel case ammo to be shooting, which I knew was not the best, but I went for, I needed more ammo, and so I just went with what's cheapest. I had kind of assumed that it would perform on par to the brass PPU ammo that I used in my past couple videos, thinking it's acceptable accuracy, but I noticed my groups were definitely a lot wider. I knew this is not the best ammo. You buy this for quantity over quality, but I think that also, I was surprised by just how much it varied. So I think what I want to do next time is maybe I'll try spend a few bucks on some Black Hills or some more match grade ammunition that I've heard of. I need to do a little more research to find what's the right one, but I would be curious to know how that ammo will complement my current skill level as well, to see how my groups are. Knowing that the ACOG is not a super precision scope, but I still would be very curious to know, so I might try that out. I also have to keep in mind though that ammo is not going to be the be all end all to my problems. I know that ultimately what I need is more practice, but I think it was particularly eye-opening this range session, the difference even just between normal steel case and then like normal brass. And so that's something I'll probably devote a little more time into researching. So overall, that's it for this range session, guys. Appreciate you watching yet again and kind of following along on my journey. It's definitely a lot more challenging, but a lot more rewarding than just shooting within shorter distances, at least in my opinion. It's a whole different set of skills, but it's really fun. And so I definitely will keep going at it and keep bringing you guys along. Until the next time, I will catch you guys in the next video.